we can jump in. Okay, perfect. So the YouTube stream is also on, the YouTube chat is also there. So no matter where you are joining from, I can read your messages and I can respond accordingly, right? Perfect. So in this session, we are going to continue from where we left off in the previous one. So again, two quick announcements before we jump into the session or before we jump into the topic as such. The very first thing is that actually, let me just put the link in the chat. 1 second. Right. So the link for the HTML assignment, I am now putting in the chat, right? This is the HTML assignment, and this is the only one that you have to complete for now, right? So I have added the link a bunch of times. I'm also adding that same on YouTube as well. Okay, done. I've added the assignment link to the chat, right? And you should be able to check that out. So again, this is the link in case you have not received the email. This is the link for the assignment. I will also attach the same link in the repository as well, right? So the repository where I have everything, I will also, um, you know, um, update this link. Again, the link is in the chat. So this will contain only HTML questions, right? You will not have questions from any other language. The questions will be only HTML. So you can check that out and try to finish it off as soon as possible because we finish CSS this week. So then next week you will get CSS assignment also, right? So try to finish it off as soon as you can so that you can then work on the CSS assignment as well, right? So yes, again, if you have not received email, if none of that has happened, I've given you the link in the chat. That should suffice. And again, announcement number two, of course, here is the link to the repository. Again, I have added everything until the last session. So session 6 PPT, session 6 code, session 6 link, recording link has also been added to this repository. So you can go ahead and you can check that out, right? So if I quickly show you the repository once again. So again, this is the repository. As you can see, the link you already have, right? I have added everything up till session 6, you can see, right? And I've also added all the recording links over here. Let me also add the assignment link as well. So HTML assignment link. Okay, so I'm adding this as well in the repository. So now everything is up to date. You can find the assignment link as well over here, right? So I've added that also. And yes, that's basically everything you need from the sessions. The assignment needs to be done on TapTap, which is the LMS, right? So the assignment has to be done over there itself. And yes, with this, now we can finally start with the session. So I hope I have resolved all your assignment queries, and I've also resolved all your uh, session recording queries, right? So that is done. So again, Manasa, these are full stack sessions. This is not cybersecurity. This is the seventh session of the full stack training, right? So yes, that is more or less it. Now let's jump into the concepts. So far we've had seven or rather 6 sessions in total, right? 3 sessions on HTML and then 3 sessions on CSS, or rather, this is the third session on CSS. And we'll try to finish off CSS in this one. And then we'll take one session where we simply make 2 projects. So in the next session, what we'll do is we'll explore something called Bootstrap. And we'll try to create 2 simple projects using Bootstrap. So basically by this week, HTML and CSS will be completely done, right? Now, coming to what we have discussed so far. So in the previous session, we have been talking about the idea of font and text styling. So I've shown you how to add fonts from the internet, how to add custom fonts, font size, decoration, capitalize, transform, all of these font related stylings we have discussed in the last session. Then we have talked about the box model. So again, super important. This is used to space things around on the screen. So we have discussed the content styles, padding, border, margin. All of this has been discussed. We'll use this again today. We'll use this in the next session also. We will require this. So this will be used repeatedly. Then finally, we discuss positioning. Again, I'll give you a quick recap on positioning today before we jump to the next topic or the next major part, right? So this is what we have discussed so far. And again, as of now, what we should be able to do is to create something like this, right? So by just looking at this, can you write this code? So that is a question for you. You can let me know in the chat. Just by looking at this output in one glance, do you think you will be able to write this code on your own? Of course, the content could be dummy, right? But we want the exact same output. I mean, a custom font, if not the exact same font, a custom font, but we have different things. So you can see we have 3 lines of headings, right? We have, three lines of headings, and then, a different font for this paragraph, and then the button styles as well, right? So, yes, can you do this? Yes or no? I see almost everybody saying yes in the chat. That's perfect. So let's quickly, check um, this as well. So what we can do is let us quickly try to create this in 5 minutes, and then we'll jump to the next topic because I want to put it all together, and we'll do it step by step. I will ask you, right, what needs to be done. You need to tell me, use this tag or write this code, and that is how we'll go about this. So I will make our file index.html, and then I'll make one more file, styles.css. Right. So the first question for you really quickly is, how do we connect these two things? So I've created the HTML boilerplate here, right? This is in place. So the question for you in the chat is, which tag do we use to connect the CSS to HTML using external styling? So let me get rid of everything that we have not discussed. And let's say project CSS, the link tag, perfect. And where does it need to go in the file? Within which tag should this be? Should be inside the head tag, perfect. So I'll add link here, and then I will just add styles.css, perfect. So this is how we can link to the CSS, right? Next up in the body, if we take a look at the output, it's really simple. We have 3 headings, or rather one heading split across 3 lines, and then one paragraph. So I will add the heading for you. You have to tell me, how do I split it between 3 lines? So I'll just say explore your creative side. That's one line. Learn a new art form. That's the second line. And then follow your passion as a third line. Now the question for you is, how do I split this into 3 lines? The line break, perfect. So most of you have got this right. All we have to do is add the BR tag for line breaks, right? So this is one. Let me add another BR tag over here, and that should be it, right? Done. Now, if I just go ahead and run this quickly, so let me file, where is that live server option? Just a second. Yes, open with live server. There you go. And it should open up. There it is. Let me open this up on Chrome. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So our headings are now in 3 lines. That is exactly what we wanted. Awesome. Let's add the paragraph. I'll just add some lorem stuff for now, because again, we don't really need the exact same content. We just want, the output to match. So that is done. Now let's also work on the button. So can you quickly tell me the tag for button? Button, perfect. So we have button. Is there any other way of creating a button? Other than the button tag, is there any other way to create a button? Perfect. So there are a couple of correct answers. The first is input. So input type submit will give a button. There is also input type button that will also make a button. And we can also make one using the box model. So we can make a div, and then we can style the div to make it look like a button, right? So we can make the div look like a button as well. So that is the third way. And of course, we can also make it clickable. So there are 3 different ways as of now that we have discussed in which this can be done. But this is, I think, join the community. Perfect. So we have joined the community. Perfect. So the HTML part is now done. Let's now get to the CSS. Since we have one instance of each tag, I'm not going to add any IDs or classes. we can just use these HTML tags themselves as selectors. So the first question is, how do I set this color to the background? Can you write the CSS code for that in the chat? So this entire background color, how do I set that in CSS? Give me the exact code for that in the chat. So I will style the body. I will select that. Perfect. The style is background color. And then there are three different ways to do it. I will just use the default color here, which is more or less the same. It's a different shade, but it works. Then we have the heading. So here we need to change the font. So can you tell me which CSS property let us change the font? Font family, perfect. We don't have font size for changing the font. That is for increasing the size of the font, obviously. So let me pick any one which will change it. Looks good. We don't need so many. We could just give one, and that did not work. I think we'll go with Verdana. That should probably work in my system. There you go. So Verdana works. And then I also increase the font size a little bit, something like this. And that's too big. Let's go for 48 probably. Okay, better. Now the same thing for paragraph. Here we want to change the font family. So font family, let's go with make sans. Again, I hate this font, but it works on the system. So that's the only reason I'm putting that in, and done. Right? Now, can you quickly tell me how can I make this paragraph bold in CSS? Which property or value should I use to make this paragraph bold in CSS? I don't want to do this with HTML, right? I want to do it with CSS. Perfect. The style is font weight, and we can set that to bold. Awesome. This should get it done for us. Perfect. Now let's quickly come down to the button. So in the button, the first thing that I want to do is to create some space because it's a very small button. So what can I do to increase the space in the button? All right, so this is where the box model comes into the play, and we have to work with the idea of padding, right? So padding will add some space inside the button. You can see if I put 20 pixels, it creates some space within the button. It's exactly what we want. Then again, we can set the font size to a bigger font size at 20 pixels, and we can also set the background color of the button to pink probably, and okay, looks more or less the same. Now there is this one additional thing. If you see, there is a shadow of the button over here, right? We have not discussed this yet, but in CSS, it is called box shadow. So there is a style called box shadow or a property called box shadow that we can use, right? So again, you can refer to the syntax for this on W3 Schools. I will let that as a challenge for you. But what I also want to do quickly is to make this curved on the borders, which is basically make the button have rounded borders. As of now, you will see the borders are straight, normal borders. So which property can I style to make it rounded? The border radius, perfect. So there's a property called border radius. We can set the value like this. And now you will notice that it is curved by 10 pixels, right? So this is exactly how we can set the border. And that's more or less it for this one. So yes, I'm really happy that a lot of you know this probably by going through the documentation, because we did not discuss border radius as far as I remember in the session. So yes, well done. This is the output. So yes, this means that you are able to, put things together now. So far, so good. Perfect. Now let's jump to the next part, the focus for today's session, and we'll get to the advanced selectors later. That's a very small topic, but but what I want to really focus on today are two very important layout related styles that CSS gives us. The first is, as you can see, it's called Flexbox. So everything on the internet that you see aligned in one line is basically done with the help of a Flexbox. So I am skipping everything which is not used in the industry, right? There are three, four different ways to do this. We can do this with a property called float. We can do this with absolute positioning. We can do this in a ton of different ways. But what I am focusing on are just things that we will need in the industry because we don't have a lot of time, right? We are already running very late in terms of the curriculum. So I don't want to spend time on concepts that are not going to be required in the industry. So we are going to discuss two things, Flexbox and Grid. Both of these things are basically how we arrange content on the page, right? So let's go ahead and quickly understand how this works. So for now, I will just comment this whole thing out, and the same thing with HTML as well, right? Now, what we want to do is we just want to make a section. This will be our container. And within the section, for now, I am just going to put 4 paragraphs, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. I've put 4 paragraphs inside a section. Very simple, nothing complicated here, right? We have just put 4 paragraphs inside a section. Now, as you notice by default, like we already know, right? Paragraphs are both section and paragraphs are block level elements, right? Which means they will occupy the entire block. They occupy the entire block, right? They take up the entire space on the screen. So the question is, the challenge for us is, now if this is our section, then what we want to do is we want to arrange these paragraphs in this way. We want to arrange them next to each other like this. So effectively, what we want to do is we want to convert the display from the block level display to an inline display and then space them around. That is what we basically want to do. So the best way to do this, or the simplest way to do this in CSS. So again, I will be using the style here. So the tag is section. What we can do is we can set the display to flex. The property that we have available is display flex. You will notice as soon as I do this, immediately the output changes to what we want, right? Immediately you will see the output has now become what we want it to be. 4 paragraphs are now arranged in line in a single line. So this is the flex box, right? So our section, that is the outer container, this section, we typically call it container or wrapper, right? So if I just give it an ID or a class, it will either be wrapper. This is one way to do it. And then the second one is container. Okay, so this is the second name that we generally give. You can call it whatever you want, but these are the two terms that we typically use. So we either call it the container or the wrapper. Perfect. Now, this is how things are on the screen, right? You can see they are arranged next to each other on the screen. This is exactly what we wanted. Now, the next step is that the Flexbox has a bunch of different ways of arranging this on the screen, right? So, for example, let us say that instead of this row style arrangement, you want a normal column style arrangement. So there is something called flex direction, which we can change to column. What this will do is this will take the setup back to how it was in a column fashion. As you can see, if I just zoom in, you can see now it is arranged in a normal column style. If I just remove this, so the value that we are using is row, which is the default value. As soon as I change it to row, you will notice again, it basically shows up next to each other, which is what we actually want. So this is one property, flex direction, right? In a similar way, we also have something called row reverse. So let me just modify the text here. I'm just adding numbers so that this will make sense. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've added 4 numbers. You can see them now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I just change it to row reverse, then as the name suggests, you will automatically see that 4 shows up first, then 3 shows up, then 2 shows up, and then 1 shows up. If I go for normal row again, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the order. If I choose row reverse, the order is reversed, right? Similarly, there is another thing called column reverse. So this would basically make it 4, 3, 2, 1 in terms of columns. So again, effectively, what the Flexbox lets us do is it gives us custom, like complete control of all the elements inside the box, right? So again, in this case, the section is our box and everything inside this section is the child elements of this flex box. So what flex gives us is custom control over everything that we want, right? Now let us say that we want everything to align to the left of the screen. So let us comment this out. And this is the normal behavior. Actually, let me remove one paragraph to make it better so that we have some space on the screen. So let's just actually, make some space on the screen. Now, how do we make some space here? All our box model concepts still work. So if I just go ahead and I say padding 20 pixels, then you will see this will create the outer space because this is for the entire box. If I do the same thing for the paragraph, right? So if I set the padding 20 pixels, then this will create space inside, as you can see. Between 1 and 2 now, we have 40 pixels of space, 20 pixels coming from 1 and 20 pixels coming from 2. So this is how we can work with this, right? Now, this is basically what the flexbox is. Now let us say that we want everything to be aligned in a particular way. For this, we have a property in Flexbox which is called align items, right? So we can use align items. So we have align items and we can decide what we want to do. So if you want everything to be aligned to the start of the flex, we can use flex start. If you want everything to be aligned center, we can use center, etc., etc. So I think we should go for justify content, and this will be better. This should look different. Let me try to make this full screen so that will make more sense. Yeah, because right now we can't really see any differences as such. So yes, I think now we should be able to see some differences. And let me delete everything that is not needed. Right. And again, I think I will remove one more paragraph just to, tell you what we are trying to do here. It doesn't really matter much actually. But yes, so now when we are working with Flex, right, if you just check out W3 schools also for the Flex box, you will notice that there are a couple of different properties which are available, right? Which in which case we can actually set things and move them around. So you can see this is something that we've already done with the reverse and all of that. Let's see. There's nothing much here. Let's go for MDN Flexbox. So you can see there's a long scroll, but again, what I wanted is not there. No worries. So what we can do is we can just keep experimenting with this and we can actually, try a couple of things out. So we can say align items and we can move them around. So let us say, for example, that I give this a custom height of say 500 pixels. This is the height that we have given. Now, if I set align items to flex end, let me also add a background color so it will be more obvious as to what is going on. So as you can see now, this is the entire flex box, right? And then what we have done is we have added or aligned these items to flex end. So that way all the items are being pushed to the bottom of the box. That is what we are talking about here. Similarly, if you give a custom width, let's say you say 100% of the screen, if that is the width that you give, then you can set the justify content to different values. For example, justify content center would arrange everything in the center of the screen. For this, what I will do is I will give a custom width to the paragraph as well. So now this will make sense. You can see now these paragraphs are centered on the screen. So let me focus on one thing at a time. And yes, so now if you see, right, the flexbox width is 100%. Each paragraph is taking 20%. So this is effectively 60%. Now, there is some 40% of space which is left out. So 20% on this side and 20% on this side. Where is this coming from? It is coming from the align, right? We have said justify to center. So this is where that is coming from. Justify content center. If we change this to flex start or if you change it to left, then everything will move to the left, as you can see. Similarly, if you change this to flex end or right, then everything will move to the right, as you can see, right? Now there are three values which are most commonly used. Let me show them to you now. The first value is called space around, right? So space around, as you can see, this is one of the most commonly used styles in the real world. What happens in space around is we have more space between the items and less space on the edges, right? So on both the corners, if you see, we have less space, but we have more space between the items. So that is space align. Then the next value is space between. So space between will push them to the corners. There is no space at the corners. There is only space between these items, right? The topic name is Flexbox. Satya, the topic name is Flexbox, right? So what we have is three things again: space around, space between, and then the one that I use the most is space evenly. So space evenly, as you can see, will add equal amount of spacing between all parts of the screen, right? So between the corners also and between the items also, it will add equal amount of space. So this is how we can work with the flex box in the horizontal sense, right? What we can do is we can also add one more paragraph and none of this will matter, right? So if you see, we've added the fourth paragraph and we still have some space between them. So that is why we use a flex box, right? Again, I'll add one more and you will see it will just keep adding or fitting everything in a single row. So if I add a few more paragraphs, you will see it just tries to fit everything in one row. If we want to improve on this or work with this, what we can do is we can set something like something called flex wrap. So the property is a flex wrap and we can set it to wrap. So that way now you will see it will move, like it will fit in whatever will fit and it will move the rest of it to the next line. So again, if you take simple mathematics, each paragraph is taking up 20%, the entire screen is 100%, which means we can fit 5 paragraphs in one row. So that is exactly what this is doing. And this is first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph, fourth paragraph, and fifth paragraph. As soon as 100% is done, it moves the control to the next line, right? So in the next one, we have 4 paragraphs. They take up 80%. So rest of the 20% of space is now occupied or now distributed equally among all of them. So this is space evenly. Okay, let me again quickly repeat this so that it makes a lot of sense, just in case others are also confused. So what I'll do is I'll start from scratch, right? Let me first create the HTML, then I will write the CSS. So again, Flexbox is used to arrange content on the screen. So what we're doing is we are creating a section. The section has 4 paragraphs, for example. So I've just added 4 paragraphs. Pay very close attention. By default, the paragraphs show up normally on the screen like this. What we want to do is we want to make them show up in one row. Right? Now they are in block display. They're taking up full rows. We want them to show up next to each other. For this, what we can do is we can set the section as a flex. So we can say section display flex. As soon as we do this, you will notice that automatically all four paragraphs show up in a single row. This is what the flex box does. Now, what else can we do? Well, number one, we can adjust the width of the paragraph. So we can say width is 20%. So now by default, let me also add a background color so that it becomes more visible. So you will see now, since I've reduced the width of the paragraphs to 20%, each paragraph now is taking 20%. So 20%, 20%, 20%, and 20%, which is effectively 80% in total, right? So the rest of the 20% is now empty. It is waiting for us to tell what to do with this other 20%, right? So for this, what we can do is we have a property called justify content. Right? The property is justify content. Over here, there are a lot of values, but the ones that we use most often are space around, space between, and space evenly. I'll use space evenly. As soon as I set it to space evenly, you will notice that there is equal amount of space between everything, right? So effectively, if we have 20% extra space left, then it is distributing it 4% each, so that the total row gets 20% space between each part, right? Including the corners. There are other properties also. There is something called space around, and wherein the corners get more space and the content gets more space and the corner gets less space. So if I make this space around, you will see there will be more space between the content and less space on the edges, as you can see. Similarly, we have something called space between, wherein we don't have any space on the corners. The space is only distributed between the elements, as you can see, right? So again, you can choose whatever you want, but generally we use space evenly, which does something like this. The other thing that we could do if you want to custom control this is just set it to center. So that way, again, the 20% space is on the sides and the elements are all centered like so. But again, generally we don't use center. The most common value is either space around or space evenly. One of the two is what we use mostly, right? So this is the way we arrange things horizontally. Now let's add one more thing to it. Let's say we have height. The exact same setup works with align items as well. So if I set align items to center and if the flex box is 500 pixels in height, you can see now that all of these are aligned at the center of the flex. If I remove that align center, then it will basically align at the top by default. So as you can see, the default alignment is at the top and at the left. But we have said justify space evenly and align center. So that is moving it in a way that it takes up the center and it creates that space on the top and the bottom. In the exact same way, we have other options here also. So we have again, we can align them to flex end, so everything moves down, right? We can align them to flex start, so everything is at the top. These are the three different horizontal options, vertical alignment options that we have: top, center, and end. So like start, center, and end, right? We don't have space around, space evenly over here. That is only for horizontal alignment. Okay, so this is how a Flexbox works. There are a few more things to it which you can explore later on, but I have a cheat sheet that I want to show you. So let me just open that up. Again, I will upload this onto the repository as well. But this is a cheat sheet which, if you notice, will basically tell you everything you need to know about the Flexbox. Right? So it's a very good PDF that I have just added. Right? And again, I will add it to the repository as well. So all Flexbox styles are very nicely explained in this, as you can see, right? So if you just refer to this document, you can get the content arranged in whatever order you want. Okay. So again, I will add this into the on the repository as well. And that should be, it should then be, you can then download it and keep it with you. So this is how the Flexbox works. Again, it's very simple, as you can see. Now, one quick thing is if I just make one of these paragraphs special, for instance, and let me just add a height to that. So let's say we say hash special. This has a custom height of 500, let's say 300 pixels. And we can also give it a background color to make it highlight. So let's go for this color. And let's give it a width of 30%. So we have made a couple of changes to one individual item, and as you can see, that will not affect the Flexbox in any way. It will still show up as expected. It will still work fine. So even if you have elements of different heights, you can still work with them. For this, what we do is we use a property called baseline. So this is usually used for centering them. But again, baseline in this case is the same because the content is the same, right? So if I just probably add more content to it, then we might see some change in the setup. Okay, so this is how we can work with some custom styles and custom stuff. But again, it doesn't really matter to the Flexbox, and most of it will still be as expected. So again, if you do center, you will now see that it is centered. And then this itself could become another flex box, and we can work with it that way as well. So let us say that this one paragraph is in a different div, right? So then what we can do is we can make this div into a flex box itself. So let's say div, and then again we can set the display to flex. So you'll see now again it creates a different output. So the point is we should be able to experiment with these things, because again, this will be a very complicated layout if we end up doing that, right? So basically how we typically work with this is we create nested boxes, and that is how we go about it. So MDN has a very good article on this. Let me just quickly show that to you. So this will, you'll also understand. Again, I will add this link in the repository as well. I'm sharing it in the chat also if you just want to check this out right now. But if you just scroll down, you will see this section called nested flexbox. So that's what I want to just show you. Here you can see, right, complex flexbox example. So we can achieve an output like this, like a very complicated output using the flexbox, right? So this is where we use flexboxes in real life. So on almost every website that you visit, wherever you see any arrangement of this sort, where things are arranged next to each other, that is a flexbox. That is where we are using a flexbox, right? So again, you can see the structure also. Here the section is a flexbox which contains 3 articles. The third article then contains 3 divs, and then each div then contains buttons. So this is how we can achieve this sort of a structure, right? So again, this is what flexboxes are used for in a real life situation. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Let me now take questions on Flexbox before we move to the next concept of grids. So yes, now I'm open for questions. If you have any questions on this, please put them in the chat. If you have any questions on anything else also, please let me know. Let me try and answer them all together. Then we'll move to the grid part. So yes, the chat is now enabled. You can now go ahead and put your questions in the chat. So again, it would be great if you put questions relevant to the topic and not random things like attendance links. We've had enough questions on that. So yes, open style sheet. Okay, here is the style sheet. You can read that out. So Pavan, we are using Flexbox to arrange things on the screen. So far, what we have seen is how to add content, how to style it, but we have not seen how to put them next to each other, right? If you see any website, different things on the website are arranged in different ways. This is how we achieve that arrangement. So that's why we are using a Flexbox. So there are a lot of questions about assignments. So again, for the assignment, what you have to do is create a single HTML file, name it with your name, your registration number, something that is unique, upload that to your GitHub account, GitHub repository, and submit the link. Very simple, right? I hope everybody has used GitHub already. So you just have to go to github.com. The instructions were given in the installation sheet. So you have an account already if you went through that sheet. The sheet is available in the repository. If you did not receive the instruction sheet or the installation sheet, please go to the repository. The sheet is available over there. Create an account on GitHub, create a new repository, upload your HTML file. It will give you a link. That is your submission link. Yes, so again, Kiran, I will come to the difference between flex and grid after we have discussed grid. And right now, nobody knows what grid is. So I should not talk about that difference. Let me first cover grid next, then I'll tell you the difference between them. Okay, so now a couple of quick questions are there around. Girish, you cannot rename, like you can rename a repository by going to the settings. So for example, if this is your repository, let me just show you. So you will see the settings at the end over here, right? So if you just see this part, there is a settings button. You can just go over there, scroll down to the very end of this settings, and you will see all the options to basically delete, rename, all of that will be there. Renaming is typically not allowed. So you can see rename option here. It is not recommended. It's the first option in settings. And then the last option is deletion. So you can check it out over there, right? So what I will do is I will quickly repeat this in 1 minute and then we'll move to the next section. I've already repeated this twice, but since a lot of people are talking about like are responding in the chat to repeat this, I will do it quickly. So again, basically we use flex boxes for arranging things on the screen, specifically when we're talking about horizontal arrangement, right? So whenever you have a situation where you want to arrange the content in this fashion, next to each other, like this horizontally, that is where we use a flex box. In most websites, if you open any website for that matter, you will see a lot of content being arranged in this way, right? So for example, let us just check any one website out. Let's say we go to youtube.com, right? So you will see all of these videos that are arranged. This is all flexbox. You can think of it like this. This entire thing is one flexbox, right? This entire thing is one flexbox. And within this, we have one video, two videos, three video, fourth video, five, six, seven, and eight, right? So this is exactly what flexbox lets us do. Right? That is why we are using a flexbox. Every single section on this website is working with a flexbox. If I just scroll down to the next section, you will see again the shorts are arranged using a flexbox. Then again, this entire block of videos is arranged with a flexbox, right? So YouTube practically works on flexboxes. That is the whole point, right? So in a similar way, you can visit any website and you will see that flexboxes are used for arranging items on the screen. Right? I hope that makes sense now. Coming quickly to what a flexbox is or how to create one, we can set the display to flex. This is how we make it. So this needs to be a container tag, right? So it either needs to be a section or a div or a header or a footer. Again, like we have discussed, there is no difference between a section and a div. The only difference is section means something, div does not mean anything. So section belongs to this category of semantic tags, which means it means something. There is an additional meaning attached to it, whereas div does not really mean anything. So again, that's the only difference. You can use any one of them. The output will not be different. So if I just replace this with div and just change this to div, none of this will change. The output, as you can see, will exactly remain the same, right? So there is no difference between the two. Coming quickly to the Flexbox properties or the major properties that we use. Again, I don't have time to go into every single thing in detail. That's why I gave you the cheat sheet. Right? I showed you this cheat sheet, this one. And so I will upload this to the repository. You can get it from there. This, as you can see, contains in-depth explanation of everything. But again, I'll just show you the most important things. So there's only two things that we work with. The first is this justify content, and then the second is align items. These are the only two things that we use 90% of the times when working with a Flexbox. How do we create it? We just say display flex. That's it. This creates the Flexbox for us. As soon as we do this without adding any other styles, you will see the content still gets arranged, right? So if I just add one line of code, or if I just remove this one line of code, we are back to our normal HTML where things are styled one under the other as block elements. What we can do is we can just add display flex. As soon as we do this, you will notice things are in one row. That's what flex does. Then we can set how that arrangement needs to look. So this justify content is used for horizontal alignment and align items is used for vertical alignment. Vertical alignment is not generally used 99% of the times. We want to use horizontal alignment only. Now within this, we have a couple of options. So the default value is left. As you can see, this is the default value. It is also called flex start. So basically start of the flex, right? Then we have flex end. So this will move everything to the right side, if you can see, right? Then we have center. This will bring everything to the center. by creating space on both sides. But better, what we do is we use space evenly. So space evenly adds equal amount of spacing between the elements so that we get a good looking output on the screen, right? So that's how we can work with it. This is basically a flex box. Now, another thing that you need to know probably is that if we have more values than we can fit, right? So let us say that the flex box has more items than it can fit. What it will do is it will still try to fit everything in a single line, as you can see, right? There's so much content here, but what it is trying to do is it is just trying to fit everything in like this, right? So what we need to do for that is we can set the property wrap, flex wrap to wrap. This will enable the flexbox to only take up as much space as it needs and then move the rest to the next row. So this is how YouTube works, right? They have two rows of content. This is how we can do that. We can say flex wrap wrap. If I remove a few things, it will automatically adjust. As you can see, since each paragraph is styled at 20%, we have 5 paragraphs in the first line. So that totals to 100%. And then the next 2 paragraphs are on the next 2 lines or the next line, occupying 40% of the space, and the other 60% space is empty, as you can see, right? I have one request for you guys. If you want to basically understand this better or make the most out of this session, please focus on the explanation when I'm explaining it. If you have questions, ask them when I ask you to ask questions, right? I've been waiting after every topic. Still, when I'm explaining, I keep getting attendance link, assignment link, this and that. That is not the focus of the session. We will help you with that later, right? We can help you with that. When I'm explaining something, try to understand it. That will be helpful for you, not randomly asking questions in the chat. That is not going to help, right? Anyway, I am here, I am explaining it. So I think whoever is listening properly, they are understanding this. If you're not paying attention, I can point people out from the chat who are not paying attention. I don't want to do that, but that is your loss, right? You have to understand that I am here for you guys. So if I'm explaining something, try to pay attention, try to understand it. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense, to attend the session without paying attention to it. So if you're just here to disturb us or ask questions, you might as well skip the session. It will not be helpful for you. So for the benefit of everybody, please try to pay attention. Otherwise, there's no point in coming up. This session is for you so that you get an internship, you get a job, you get a certificate. So yes, try to pay attention and not disturb others in the chat. Anyway, coming back to the point. So this is everything that we have in terms of the flex box, right? So again, the major properties that we work with: display flex, then justify content, and flex wrap. 90% of the cases, these are the only properties that you will need. Again, whenever you visit any website, any horizontal arrangement of items or any horizontal arrangement of content will be done with the flex box, right? So again, if you remember the MDN article that I was just showing you, they have a very good example of a complicated structure like this. If you notice this carefully, complex example, right? So this entire output can be made using a flex box, which is what you can see, right? So this is the kind of arrangement where we use flex box. Okay. So again, this is still a horizontal arrangement. If you see, there are 3 horizontal boxes in one row. That's it. The amount of content in each box will be different. That is all fine. But we still have 3 separate things in one box. So this is the entire box within which we have 3 content pieces arranged horizontally on the screen. So that's why we prefer a flex box over here. Now, coming to the next part. So the next topic in the session is grid, right? Grid is another way of arranging things on the screen. And this is what grid can do. Grid helps us create dedicated sections, which can in turn have a flex box. Right? Again, let me repeat this. Grid can help us create dedicated sections, which can in turn have a flex box. What I mean by that is Grid will help us set the outer layout of the page, right? Now, within this body, we can have as many flex boxes as we want to arrange our content. Within the header, we can have a flex box for the menu. Within the navigation, we can have a flex box. Within the footer, we can use a flex box. But the overall structuring of the page, the overall layout of the page is typically set using a grid. Another thing that you should know is generally when we work for mobile responsive designs, we try to skip grid and only cover or only use like give preferences to Flexbox. We can still make grid over there also, but again, the focus or the preference that we generally give is given to Flexboxes. That is the idea. So this is the difference between the two. A grid is used in the case of outer structure of the page, and Flexbox is used to add the actual content in the page. That's the difference between the two. Now let me show you an example of how to create a grid. So when we want to create a custom grid, the first thing that we have to do is we have to decide how much or how many rows and columns do we want in the grid, right? So if I just comment this out, let's create another section for this. Right now, I will again add, let's say 2 paragraphs, so 3 paragraphs here. Again, by default, there will be no change. It will be a simple output like this, right? Standard, basically the block level code. In the case of the grid, again, we have to set the display to grid. So that will be section display grid. Then what we have to do is we have to, again, this will not change the output. If you notice, there is no change in the output, unlike a flex. So if this is a flex, then by default, you will see it will change to a horizontal row. But a grid does not work like that, right? So what we need to do for grid basically is we have to custom set the number of rows and columns that we want, right? So we set it like this. We say grid template rows and grid template columns. Again, if you look at the output, let's say that we want to achieve this kind of an output, right? Where this is our screen. Let's just split it into 2 parts. So this could be our menu for the ad, like for the navigation, and this is where the content will show up. To create something like this, what we can do is we can split the grid into two, right? So we have the first column and the second column like a normal table. So we can set the grid template columns, right, to 30% and then 70%. Now, if you see the paragraphs are split, as you can see, the first bit is the paragraph on the left hand side that's taking up 30% of the space, and the other paragraph is taking up 70% of the space. So if I just remove that extra third paragraph, then this will make a lot more sense, right? Again, what we can do is we can also add some empty space. So let's say we want 20%, then 10% empty space, and then 70% for the rest of it. So then we can just add an empty div for it to utilize that empty space, as you can see now, right? So this is your left menu. This is your right hand side. Again, if I give a background color to this whole thing, right, you can see it is one full block. So that is what a grid is, right? Again, we can arrange the content in whatever way we want, like so. Now, instead of these P's, let us make divs. Right? So I'll just make 3 division tags like so. And the first div will take up the first column. Then the second div takes up the second column. The third div takes up the third column. So in the first one, let us try to create a nav bar. Right? This could contain a couple of links. So I'll just say home. So let's say we have home, about, contact, no, and let's say login, for example. So this left hand side can be our link menu or our menu. So again, what I can do is I can just set this to href and empty so that they look like links, and then put a line break to make them go to the next line, right? Let me also add a ID here. let's say menu. Then we'll style this menu quickly. So hash menu and change the background color to yellow. Okay, so now you will see this is our menu. This is the left half, which is our menu. Then in the second div, we don't want anything, so that can be empty. In the third div, let us say we want a couple of paragraphs. So we can put lorem. Let's put a couple of paragraphs over there. This is our content, right? So if I give this div a background color now, let's give this an ID of content, right? So if I just go ahead, hash content, and then the same setup, background color pink, for example, you will see the clear difference here, right? So the left-hand side is fixed. This is a grid. It's a table-based structure. So we are saying that the left column will take up 20% of the space. There'll be 10% of empty space in middle, and the right column will take up the remaining 70% of the space, right? So this is how we can work with a grid. Just like this, what we can do is now, let us say that in the right-hand side for the content, we want two flex boxes. So one flex box like this, and then one flex box under it. So for that, what we can do is we can just use the same setup. So the div content can now become display flex. As soon as I do this, you will see this is exactly what we wanted. The div is now showing us the content. And again, we can set flex wrap to wrap. It can again take up as much space as it needs, right? If I just change the width of the paragraphs to, let's say, 20% each, then again, we can arrange this. We can say justify content and then space evenly. This becomes our first flex, right? Wrong place. We have to style the flex box here. So there, and now you can see this looks much better. Similarly, what we can do is we can copy the whole thing and create another row, another flex. And again, this can have different pieces of content, etc., etc., etc. So again, this is how we can basically work with the entire setup. I hope that makes sense now. We can also style this as exactly like how we want it. So we can also set the rows if we want, right? So grid template rows. If you want to create multiple rows, we can set that as well. This is our flex. This is our grid works. So the way we put it to use in a real world application, again, if I show you YouTube, it will make sense, is that you can see this outer structure, right? This left menu, this top menu, this is the structuring of the page is done using grid, right? So for instance, how YouTube works is, let us say that this is the entire page, right? If this is the entire page, then, so let me just quickly make the page. If this is the entire page, then the left-hand side is a grid, the top is a grid, and then this is again a grid. The structure is being set with a grid, right? Then within this, within the content part is where we have the actual videos. So if I just show this to you in the whiteboard, let me just open that up there. So if I just open the whiteboard, if you can see this, right? So in the case of YouTube, for example, let us say that we have something like this, right? If this is our screen, if this is the entire screen, then what YouTube is doing is they are using grid to first of all create a section like this on the left hand side. This is the first section where the menu is. Then over here, they are creating another section, which is the search bar, login, profile, things like that. And then under that, they have a flex box, which is where all the videos are being shown one by one. So this is the kind of structure that we can achieve with the help of grid and flex. So generally, the real question is when to use grid, when to use flex. Well, we use both of them together in a real world application. You will see the use of grid also and flex also. It will be very rarely the case where only one of them is being used, right? So we use both grid and flex together in a real world application, right? Now let's take questions on this. So if you have any questions at this point, please let me know in the chat. And then I have a challenge for you. So I will give you 10-15 minutes now, and you have to write the code today. I will be here, I'll help you out, but I want you to try this out on your own. So Abdul, we cannot create a website on a phone. I've been telling this since the very first session. You cannot you cannot do any development on phone. You need access to a system in some way. Sure. So Devon, float is a very old technique that we can just use to put things next to each other, but it does not give us custom control like justifying the content or aligning it. We cannot also specify the width or automatically decide the space like we have with space around space evenly. And that is the major difference. Float is no longer used, right? So yeah, we only prefer flex boxes now. Arvind, we have already covered iframe in a previous session, so you can please go and watch the recording for that. It is in the media tag session where we discuss how to add media with HTML. Iframes have already been discussed. You can check that recording out. So Rupa, again, these are two different ways of arranging content on the screen. So she's asking, do we have to use them together? Yes or no, depends on you. I typically don't use a grid. I just put everything as a flex in most of my projects. But again, there are two options available. You can pick and choose how you want them to work together, right? So again, the grid is very simple. The first thing that we have to do for creating a grid is to specify the number of rows and columns that we want. So if you don't specify anything, it means one row. And we are making three columns, 20%, 10%, and 70%. They should not go beyond 100%, obviously. So this is creating three columns, something like this. So if this is our page, then the first 20% approximately is one column, then 10% is one column, and the rest 70% is the third column, right? So this is the kind of grid that we're creating using this line of code. Then what we're doing is we are adding the content to it. How do we do that? We can just add normal content using HTML tags. So if this is our section, we are adding three divs. The first div will occupy the first column, the second div will occupy the second column, and the third div will occupy the third column. Since we want that 10% to be space, blank space, we can just put a blank div. This way it will be blank, right? And then the third again is the content that we have added. And that's basically it. So that will give us this kind of an output where the content is arranged again. So 20% on the left, 10% in between, and 70% on the right. You can go ahead and style this using the normal text styles and all of those things to make it look better. But today we are only focusing on the layout. So this is how that can be done. We can use Flex only for everything again. I am just saying that these are two. So I think this is Navya's question. Why can't we use Flex for everything? You can use Flex for everything, Navya. Like I said, in most of my projects, I only use Flex. I don't like Grid. I don't use it much, but it is available. There are a lot of things in CSS that are available. If you want to use them, you can. If you don't want to use them, don't. So that's how it works. I am skipping all questions on attendance links and assignments now. I've been repeating that enough times. So sorry, but no further questions on those two things. Uh, we'll talk about the positioning again later on. Nothing will be sticky. So Surya, if you're looking at making anything sticky, you have to say position sticky. Otherwise, it will not be sticky. So that can only be set with the position. CSS code. Okay, here is the CSS code. Again, so for everybody who's asking assignment questions, I will talk to the team. I will let them know that there are issues and they will get back to you on that. But again, I have put the assignment link on the chat. The assignment link is already available on the GitHub repository as well. The assignment will only have HTML questions. You have to only answer HTML questions. In case there is any issue with this, give me a couple of days till the next session. Let me talk to the team and I will let you know. Again, I'm putting the link in the chat once again, right? If you want, please check this link. This is the HTML assignment. You don't need to open any other assignment. This link is the HTML assignment link. The code is 1331, right? I'm putting the same thing on YouTube chat as well. So please take that and check it out. For any further assignment questions, let me first discuss this with the team and then I will let you know if there are any changes. If there is anything added by mistake, we'll fix that. right? Done. Now, this is basically what we have in terms of flex and grid. The final thing that we have for you guys is something that will help you, basically experiment with this. So I'll just show you an output on the screen. And what I want you to do is spend the next 5 to 10 minutes creating it, right? So again, I want you to experiment with this, and just give me a second. I'll just share my screen again and I'll just keep it on the screen. I will not show you the solution today. We can discuss the solution in the next session, but I want you to experiment or try this out. So here is the output. What I will also do is I will also put a timer on the screen so that you have limited time to work on this, right? So I will put a 7-minute timer for this, and I would want you to experiment with this and try it out. So just give me 1 second. I'm just sharing it on the screen. I just need to put the timer side by side. 1 second. Okay, done. So I'm just sharing the screen again, and sure we go. So I have put both of these things side by side, as you can see, right? So I have a timer along with a question, which is an output, as you can see. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and try creating something like this. You can skip adding the images or the icons, but what I want you to do is to work on this part, right? So at least try to create the text part like this one, using everything that we know. So I think now you know enough that you can do this, right? So again, the Flexbox is what we can use for this. So I'll give you 7 minutes. I'm starting the timer now, and I will just unmute. I'm right here. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, but I will just give you 5 to 7 minutes and you can then go ahead and try this out. So again, I'll wait for 7 minutes and then we'll quickly discuss the approach to this. So again, it's a request. Please stop discussions in the chat and try this out. The output is on the screen. The timer is already running. Please stop all discussions and give this a try. The question is very simple. You have to replicate the output, Sandeep. This is the output. This image is the output. You have to try to replicate it using what we have discussed so far. If you don't want to add images, you can skip. But again, adding images is also something that we have discussed already. But still, if that is confusing for you, you can skip and try to replicate this output using HTML and CSS. So again, the timer is on. I will come back in 5 minutes and then we can discuss how to work with this. Okay, so we are back. The question is, were you able to do this? It's a simple yes or no question, and I want you to be very honest in the response. So were you able to get close to the output, or match the output exactly? Yes or no, you can let me know in the chat. The chat is now enabled. You can just let me know. Okay. What I will try to do is I will also quickly try to create this. Right? Let's give 5 minutes for this and see if we can get close to it. You can also compare your code with this one to see if you were close. So I'm commenting out everything that is not needed. I'll create a brand new section for this. So there are four divs that we can create inside this section. You can also create article tags and other container tag. All of that will work fine. Each div requires one heading and one paragraph. Right? So let's say, for example, 15,000 plus and community members, for example. I will just copy paste the same content. You can add different pieces of content like you had in the output. So this is basically all the HTML that we need, right? Now we can go ahead and style this up. So the first thing that we have to style is the section. And it's very simple. We just have to set the display to flex, done. And then we can change the background color to pink. And we can change this justify content to space evenly, and done. This is the output. This is what I was expecting you to create. Again, you can change the exact text styles, change the font, do stuff like that. But this is it. This is the arrangement. This is what I wanted you to create. And you can also say text align center if you want to make the text centered, right? So again, it took me 30 seconds to create this. So hopefully, I'm guessing you were able to create something close to this, right? If not exactly this, but this is it. So you just had to add one flex, some content in it, justify, space evenly, done. That's it, right? So hopefully now it makes a little more sense, right? And hopefully you will be able to create this in the next session, or if I give you something similar in the next session. This is it. This is all the CSS we need. And if I put it side by side, this is the HTML. Simple. And only like 20, 30 lines of code, and we get the output. Right, perfect. Brings us to the last part where we have a couple of quick questions for you. So let's take those up now. Again, you can put your answers in the chat. Okay, let me just put the first question. I think there's only one question for today. Yes, which is this one. So I'll give you a minute. Think about this, and please put the exactly. So this is Hema Naga. That's why I gave you 7 minutes, right? I can do it in 30 seconds. That's fine. But that's why I gave you 7 minutes to do this. So I hope that was enough time for this. And okay, the correct answer is 4. Yes. So most of you got this one right. The correct answer here is 4. We can use all of these three color codes like what we have seen in the previous session, right? So yes, that is, that is more or less it for, okay, hold on. There is one more question. Let me take that up as well. So here is the question. Again, you can take a minute, think about this and answer in the chat. Right. So the correct answer for this one is option 2, which is margin. Margin can be used to center it horizontally, like we've already seen. We can set the left margin and the right margin in a way that we can move it, to the center, because we want to, margin is the space outside the element, or margin is the space between two elements. That is what we want to change, right? So margin is the correct option. And yes, that's the correct option. Perfect. And yes, so that brings us to the end of this particular session. And again, we'll cover or do a quick recap of these concepts in the next one as well, before moving to the responsive design part with Bootstrap. So far we have covered basic CSS, we have covered different styles, we have seen how to add background images, we have seen how to add colors, other things, and we have also seen how to arrange the content on the screen. So that is something that we have discussed. Flexbox grid, right? All of those things basically have been discussed. And we've also taken four mini projects so far, like the one that I made today with the button and everything, right? Then you made one right now. So that's it. Again, for everybody who has questions with the assignment, here is an update for you. Please listen very carefully. For everybody who has questions with respect to the assignment, one of the members from the team will be joining us in the next session, and they will answer all your questions on the assignment. So where is it, how to submit, how to access, all of those questions will be answered in the next session, right? So please be patient till the next session. Somebody else from the team will join and they will answer all your questions regarding assignments. As of now, again, please focus on the concepts, try to understand things, and only then you will be able to do the assignment, right? So when we are in the session, let's focus on the topics. We'll help you with the questions, we'll answer everything, don't worry, right? Perfect. So that is it for this one. Thank you so much, you guys, for attending. The next session will be on Friday at 6. So let's meet then and continue this discussion. Until then, have a great day. See you in the next one. Bye bye.